Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hello, I'm Carol Fleck, and on behalf of the Attitude team, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD Experts presentation titled, Why Will No One Play With Me? Social Emotional Training for Teachers and Parents of Kids with ADHD. Children and teens with ADHD often have trouble making and keeping friends due to weak communication and executive function skills. When we see kids who are alone at recess, or we witness a social isolation of teens who don't get invited out by their peers, this can be heartbreaking. The good news is that social skills can be taught, learned, and improved at any age. Today's webinar will introduce coaching techniques to help children and teens who have ADHD effectively navigate their social world. Parents and teachers will learn how to promote problem solving, encourage open communication on tough social topics, and teach key skills that lead to healthy relationships. Leading today's presentation is Caroline Maguire. Caroline is the founder of a revolutionary social emotional learning methodology that breaks down the complexity of human connection into easy, actionable steps. She is the author of the award-winning book, Why Will No One Play With Me? Caroline went into private practice and founded the ADD Coach Academy's training curriculum, The Fundamentals of ADHD Coaching for Families, after several years as a highly respected social skills clinician at the Hallowell Center. She is a sought-after lecturer and is widely published in magazines and journals. Visit her website at carolinemcguireauthor.com. Before I hand over the microphone to Caroline, I have just a few housekeeping items. Those of you tuned in to the live webinar may submit questions for the expert at any time by navigating to the text box under the video player. To download the slides, click on the Event Resources section of your webinar screen. And if you're interested in the Certificate of Attendance option, look for instructions in the email you'll receive about an hour after the live broadcast. If you're listening in replay or podcast mode, visit attitudemag.com and search podcast number 418 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the Certificate of Attendance option. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine. The latest fall issue is filled with practical advice and tips from experts, including Caroline, who wrote about social anxiety and forging friendships. Other articles include how to bully-proof your kids, how to get the LD support your student needs, and so much more, including a special Success at School section, everything you need to know to prepare your child for a successful year. Subscribe today for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. Finally, the sponsor of this webinar is Play Attention. Improve executive function and self-regulation. For over 25 years, Play Attention has been helping children and adults thrive and succeed. Tufts University School of Medicine found Play Attention significantly improved attention, executive function, academic performance, and behavioral control of ADHD students. Your program will include a lifetime membership and a personal executive function coach to customize your plan along the way. Home and professional programs are available. Call 826-676-2240 or click the link on the screen to schedule your free one-on-one consultation. Visit www.playattention.com to learn more. Attitude thanks our sponsors for supporting our webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. So without further ado, I am so pleased to welcome Caroline Maguire. Thank you so much for joining us today and for leading this discussion.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so happy to get to talk about this topic. So I have not too many things that I want to say starting up front, but the first thing I want to say is at the end, we will definitely have Q&A. Please put your questions in the chat. I will definitely try to gear this material for teachers, parents, and different ages. But if we don't answer a question, I'm going to put my email at the end, and you are free to email me. I will email you back. I answer every email myself. I want to start by saying how this all came to be. So I started out working at the Hollowell Center and doing social skills groups with other clinicians. And I quickly realized that social was such an issue for our population that was under-discussed. And I would exit the room and parents would flood me. And I said, well, I need to give them information. So I started parent groups for them. And I was searching for a guide that I could give them that would explain in user-friendly terms, how do you teach your kids social skills? Tell them what the professionals knew. And I couldn't find it. So I decided to write it myself. So I went out, got a master's degree, and really started down on this journey of not only working with kids, teens, and young adults in social skills, but also in bringing this information forward in a way that people can understand and is all about how. So I'll start by telling you that how the title of the book came to be was during that time. I was asking a little boy about reading logs. Well, if any of you know our ADHD children, we will read your book, but we will not write it down in a reading log. And I asked him some adult question that, like, if you could change anything, what would you change or something? And he said, you know what I want to know, Caroline? I want to know, why will no one play with me? And everywhere I go, if I am speaking live, if I am speaking in a webinar, people tell me that they have heard that question. And so what I want to provide people with today is an understanding of how you can coach your child or your student to improve social skills. And yes, the folks who don't know that there is a challenge or who are not necessarily on board, I'm going to touch on that today, but I have much, much more in the book and much more on my website where I try to give you a lot of resources. I'll mention just this so that people know that I mentioned it. We've mentioned the word executive function even in the introduction a lot. This is just me touching on it, but executive functions is the management system of the brain. And we, with ADHD, have weaker executive function. Executive function underlies all social behavior. So it's not really a surprise that our kids might struggle with executive function stuff academically, but they also might struggle socially. So what does this do? If you have a child and you're trying to help them learn to connect to other children, and we can use this in schools, we can use this at home, you can use this as a professional, it's for anyone with executive function weakness. So if they're not ADHD, they can use this. But the idea here is that you're going to learn how to talk about social things and how to help kids witness the social world so that they can figure out and learn behaviors so that they can positively connect with people. I can't encourage enough, if you're from a school, to please strengthen that home-school connection. And if you want my help, I have tons of free handouts on my website for teachers to give to parents when they write you that 4-page email or they reach out to you about a kid who's struggling socially, because it really helps parents who are looking for these resources. So I want to ask everyone, it always comes down to us parents, I'm sorry, to start with a reset. We're all going to do our best, and we're all going to try to model as many of these healthy emotional coping mechanisms as we can. We're going to fall down a lot of the time, and then we're going to get up tomorrow and try to do better and try to do something else, right? I want to mention that social emotional learning is more than just play, and it's more than just making chit chat, and it's more than sort of what happens, that you learn about in sort of old fashioned terms. It's everything. It's your self-management, it's your decision-making, your problem-solving. So these are really essential skills, and some kids come to them very naturally, but a lot need that direct instruction. There's no shame in that. But if a kid needs that direct instruction or is struggling, time will not make this better. It is something that they need to be taught the skills, and in some cases need to improve that self-awareness. So if your kid seems to do something that alienates other kids and you're feeling like, wow, why don't they get it? That's because they might have some low self-awareness, which stems from the executive function weakness. So I'm going to teach you today how to talk to them in a way that doesn't make them alienated from you. Whatever we do to teach social skills has to have models. They need to experience the behavior, self-correct, and rehearse. So a lot of the exercises I'm going to show you are all about that rehearsal and practice process. And parents, I'm going to ask you to be their shepherd and their guide because you're with them the most. So you can do things that are very simple that help facilitate that. And I'm going to teach you how. So I am not blind to the fact that many kids say, I don't need this, thank you very much, let's not talk about this, and social becomes the elephant in the room. So one of the things we're doing with the communication technique that I'm going to teach you today is we're shifting the way we talk about these things. In many cases, we have to pave the way toward helping our kid with social problems if we have a history where we have some push-pull with them, where we have some problems. I'm going to suggest to you that as you're paving the way, you're going to shift the way you communicate, which I'm going to teach you in a second. And we're going to also talk about getting help in general. So if you don't get help for stuff, if you don't tend to call Apple Care, I'm going to suggest to you that you start doing that. And we want to repair the relationship with the child, which in many cases means spending time with them that isn't about homework and academics, and where we don't talk to them about problems, we talk to them about their strengths and we enjoy each other, so that our whole thing is not about all these challenges. We remember that strong parent-child bond. You are their original teacher. You are everything to them. And so when I talk about paving the way, if you are sitting here and you're saying, yeah, that's exactly it. My kid goes down to the basement after school. They don't talk to me about stuff. Before we jump into, I'm going to do the lessons Caroline showed us, we want to pave the way and we want to do some relationship repair. And I'm going to teach you a communication strategy that you can use that will help them open up. And this is just a little bit of what I do. And if you are seeking more answers about that, please go to my website, CarolineMaguireAuthor.com. You can just Google Wild Gnome Play With Me, and there's just tons of free videos showing you how to do this. Okay. So, when you ask your kid a question and they sort of say, I'm fine, or they won't talk to you, or you can't get information, or I'm sure none of you do this, but sometimes as parents, we launch into being a historian and telling them what's gone on in the past. And we say, this is what you always do, or, you can't do that to people. You can't alienate them. You can't talk to them about this kind of stuff. You got to boss your body. You got to give them space. I'm going to ask you to stop the tell, stop the historian, and start giving them a little space and using open questions. So open questions allow them to respond. They are something like this. What's hard about going to the cafeteria? What does it feel like? What happens at school between these different groups? What do you do at recess? What's the most popular thing to do at recess? What's hard about that, right? So you're allowing them to open up and give you answers, and information is power. The more answers you have, the better off you are. Now, there are kids who are not going to answer those questions, and we will talk about that in a second, I promise. But in some cases, if your child doesn't know how to answer or they don't give you an answer, we can give them a buffet of options and say, okay, is it this or is it this, right? But a lot of times what happens with these open questions is that in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a week, you get an answer. Remember when we were talking about that? Well, the thing is that the cafeteria is really clicky and you start to get information. It also reduces the strain in your relationship because you're asking for their perspective, which we don't do with kids, right? We often don't ask kids, what is their perspective on something? The other technique is reflective listening. Now, this one reduces conflict, and I can't say enough good things about it. Let's say you have a kid who doesn't necessarily read the room and maybe does alienate people or has some opinions, even about school, that really kind of drive you nuts or that just don't seem true. You use this reflective listening technique by simply repeating back their words and what they say. You can use sort of the gist or encapsulate their words if you can't remember, which sometimes I can't, or you can use their exact words. What happens is if you repeat back someone's words, they feel very validated. They also have the chance to clarify. So they are able to let you know if you have it right. So I'll give an example. I had a kid I was working with, and he was very abrupt with people. He was really kind of always telling people what to do. And his parents were rightly kind of concerned that he can't always be doing that. And all I did was just reflect back. So it's important to tell people what to do and how it needs to be. And if you don't tell them, they might not know. And then he heard that and said, oh, no, I don't like the way that sounds. That's no good, Caroline. And I said, but I'm just repeating what you said, right? And I always play really dumb, like I didn't know. And he started to tell me how he didn't want to be basically the rule police, but his impetus behind what he was doing. So now I got information. There's something when you hear your own words, it's like you float up above your head and you hear yourself. And there's something really, really powerful about that. You can also use this for things like kids who write in their planner, right? You can say, so you think that you're just going to remember and you don't feel like it's necessary. Allow them to clarify and come back to you. This way, you're not telling them and you're not being a historian. You're trying to have a reciprocal conversation with them. What happens is the wheels start turning. It may not be tomorrow that they realize that what they're doing is rude or what they're doing isn't working out for them, but they're starting to hear themselves more. Rather than you telling them, they're also learning key problem-solving skills because when we're trying to work things out verbally, we're problem-solving. So I would really encourage you, especially because it's sometimes very strained with ADHD kids. There's a lot going on, to use these kind of methods because it's going to open things up between you. So I'm going to go to a video now. We're going to hope it works. I have a few videos to show you. This one is of a coaching conversation with an anxious girl who is really scared to do certain things at school. And I'm going to just play it for you so you can hear what it's like to have the conversation. It's not perfect. It's not like I say all the right things, but it's someone in 5th, 6th grade, I think. And it gives you just a sense of what goes on in this kind of coaching conversation where you're trying to get someone to open up about why they do certain things.
So you told me that sometimes people make friendly gestures toward you and that you don't always respond.
No, my anxiety gets the best of me.
What does that feel like?
Like everything I start getting down on myself and I just feel like, oh, I'm awkward. I'm scared. I'm not doing anything right.
So it's the fact that you're worried that you might look scared and awkward that's an issue?
Yeah.
Okay. What makes you worry that you might look scared and awkward?
I don't smile.
Okay.
I don't look happy.
Okay. What's the fear about looking scared and awkward? Like what?
Because if I look scared and awkward, no one will want to talk to me.
Oh. What makes you say that?
Because people who are scared and awkward, I mean, they're not fun and exciting, so people don't usually want to talk to them or play with them. I feel like I'm boring. People in my grade, they're just, like, some people will just crowd around them and they're just so fun, and they tell these great stories that make everyone laugh. And I don't have stories like that. I don't say things like that.
So I hear you saying is that you think being outgoing and being a good storyteller is what makes you a good friend?
I mean, no, but sort of. Because people who I know, they are like that and they have tons of friends.
Okay, so the people who have tons of friends, they tell great stories and they're outgoing.
And they're exciting.
And they're exciting. Well, what makes you feel you're not exciting?
I just get so tense and I just have this look all over me that says to other people, I'm bored, I'm scared, I'm awkward, and it makes them go away. It doesn't make them want to come talk to me.
Well, I hear you thinking that you feeling awkward makes people go away. How come?
Well, not just me being awkward, but also that I will meet someone, I become friends with them when I do actually make that step of I am talking, or I find someone who does get interested in me, or they do find my stories funny.
Okay, so it sounds like once you know someone, you really have an easy time in friendship and you don't lose them as a friend and you keep on with them and they enjoy your company?
I mean, not all the time, but sometimes.
Okay, but getting to that point in small talk, it sounds like it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
So you can hear from that conversation that the girl has this perception of herself that she's boring or she's not as exciting. One of the things I would say to you about teaching kids new social skills is that we have to keep in mind the story that they're telling themselves. And that story can be only people, with ADHD most people don't have to practice this, only people with ADHD. And I always say that's not true. There's a million books out there about social communication, which means many, many people are working on it. They could have a story that I'm not as exciting, I'm boring, therefore people don't want to talk to me. And they have that perception. So those stories and that mindset, I don't need to work on this. It's going to get better in college. It would all be fine if you, dad, whomever went away and left me alone. That story is important. And part of how we help kids build better social skills is that they are able to look at those stories and they are open to the unspoken rules of the social world and how we navigate that social world, and that they start to become more aware of what other people are doing, their norms, their habits, who they are and what they're about. And I'm going to teach you a technique called social spy to build that muscle. So what we're trying to do is be able to reach them. This technique that I'm teaching you works for any issue you have with your kid, but we're trading in that tell, and we're trying to open up the lines of communication. So instead of saying, you always do this, you can't do this, it's, you're not a good friend, you can't never text people and expect them to show up, whatever it is, we would just say what's expected from friendship, what makes someone a good friend. And we would talk about these issues in a little bit of a more detached way as well, because that way it's easier for them to open up about it. If a child has autism and ADHD, I'll just mention, of course, open questions can't work as well for them. But what we would do would be we would adapt the questions, and we would use visual underpinnings, which is one reason why Will Know and Play With Me is a very visual book, is because children on the spectrum use it. But you would just ask questions that are more situationally defined. So this all helps them reflect and think about the social world. So if you're feeling like your kid is clueless, they barge in, they don't necessarily read the room, what we need them to do is understand and be able to be coached and look at those social expectations, and then how are they adapting? And they have to learn hard skills, right? If you can't self-regulate, you have to learn to self-regulate. And I have tons more about this in other discussions and other webinars. So I don't want you to say, oh, well, she didn't talk about that today, she just touched on it. You can definitely go and see more about it. But we have to get them to reflect on the social world. We're giving them this curious learning mode using this technique, and we're making it so that instead of telling them what's wrong, we're going to become their coach and their partner on this journey, and therefore be able to coach them in the moment, because you as parents are there in the moment much more than we as professionals. If we're professionally working with a kid, we're seeing them once a week. So I want parents to learn these techniques because it's important in the moment for you to have a method to help them. So one of the other things I want to encourage you to do is make sure children have the elements and the structures needed to make friends. Part of why I want you to have the open questions and reflective listening and the communication technique is I'm going to tell you this, and then many kids are going to say, I won't join anything, I won't do anything. But I'm giving you this information right now so that you can think about it. One of the elements needed to make friends is practice opportunities, right? So I'm telling you to build these skills. We need an arena to practice with same age peers or even younger peers if that works and allows them to sort of be their best self. We need the ability to make conversation and reach out, but having shared experiences with peers where you join something and you have a reason to be with them and a job is easier than just walking up to someone in the hallway. And I would argue most kids I've ever worked with could not just walk up to someone in the hallway. So if we put kids in activities where they have an excuse to be together, then they make connection in the trenches, right? So if they're doing drama, doing yearbook, playing soccer, then they have that shared experience. That way, we can teach them the other skills they need, but they have a group or a place where they're meeting people and having those experiences. One of the things I notice about a lot of kids who struggle socially is they need that sort of infrastructure. Now, I'm not delusional. A lot of them are going to resist joining anything. They don't want to be in anything. They don't want to join. That's where we're paving the way, and we're using our open communication technique. We also should use ADHD interest. Interest is so key for us. So if they have an interest, even if it's not necessarily your interest, as long as it's safe, we could use that as a vehicle to get them involved in some things where they can meet people and be with people in a lower pressure environment. One of the things that the communication technique does is it builds a key skill that is an executive function skill called metacognition. This is basically taking a bird's eye view of a situation. See if you would love your kid to have these skills. It's the ability to be aware of your skills and abilities, your talents and strengths, but also your past history. So your themes. I don't always turn projects in on time. I sometimes am late. I sometimes struggle to walk across the hall and talk to people. And then to take that past learning into our daily decisions and our future plans. When you ask children open questions and use reflective listening, you're taking a bird's eye view of any situation. So you're allowing them to learn that key social problem solving skill because you're not going to be there for every thing in their life, right? And we need them to learn to pause and take that bird's eye view. So using the open communication is actually building skills. So if you're sort of using that, rebuilding your relationship, feeling like, oh, I want to get to the skills, you're still doing something. You're doing something great. The other technique that I really want to stress is called social spy. Social spy is this idea where you watch people without directly watching them. You're doing some people watching, but with intention, so that you look at their norms, their habits, the unspoken rules of a situation. You go and you watch with a mission. So for instance, if your child comes home and says, I want to go to the cafeteria or I want to talk to people, but I just don't know what to talk about. Or they'll say, well, I am interested in anime, or I am interested in robotics or some particular thing, but I don't know who also is. They could go to school and watch and spy with the mission of finding out who else likes robotics, who else is interested in that. They don't actually have to talk to anyone, and they don't actually have to do anything with that information except report back. Spy also does something very powerful, which is that we know we learn from observation and watching other people's actions. So it gives them a model to look at. I've done this with literally hundreds, thousands of kids. I have entire schools doing it. And so if they rehearse, which is laid out in the book, they won't get caught. And if you're worried that your kid might get caught, I would just encourage you to rehearse more. We can invent a code that they write down or that they, put in their phone in terms of the information and remembering it. But there is something very powerful about watching those actions. I'm going to show you a video, and then this is it for my videos, but I'm going to show you a video of me rehearsing with the same girl that you saw earlier, only now she's much older. And I'm just using my dining room. You can rehearse and take them to a coffee shop and practice. You can go to a mall or a food court and have them watch and then report back. And my social spy story and my selling point is that often part of what trips kids up with ADHD is they don't know some piece of information or they're unsure, but this will help them gather that information. And then you all can use the coaching technique to problem solve together. So I'm going to play one more video to show you how easy it is to rehearse and show you that anyone can do this.
Okay, so if you were at your locker and you were pretending to spy, can you show me what you would do?
I can't open it. I need help.
Okay, so how would you be at your locker but spying on other kids? Awesome.
So you saw from that video, it's a really simple rehearsal. You're going to practice. I guide you through this in Why Will No One Play With Me? But what I found is that there's also emerging research. Not only do we know that since the 50s, we've been studying this idea that if we observe action and positive social behavior, it impacts us. And kids need an image to navigate toward. There's also emerging research that shows that the more we watch actions and gestures, the more we remember. So the more that kids can watch someone do something, the more they can remember. If they're trying to figure out how do I navigate myself into playing Gaga ball at recess, or how do I look and hang out with other teenagers, if they're spying very covertly, they're going to have that image and they're going to have something that they can practice with you and navigate toward. So 70% of social information is nonverbal, right? But if you're not paying attention, running around, thinking your own thoughts, ruminating, all the things that our ADHD kids do, then you're not necessarily paying attention to that information. And so Social Spy is going to start building that social muscle by asking them to pay attention. So body language is a big thing. And I get this feedback a lot with ADHD kids, and the research bears this out, where body language tells us to stay away, right? Body language tells us that this kid is eating his cereal and he does not want us to be with him. But if you rush in and you're not paying attention and you're not spying and you don't have a practice of kind of watching and noticing, you don't necessarily notice that, and you bother him and maybe he yells at you or is unhappy. So what I would encourage you to do is, as a partner with your child, as you go about in the world, you can go to a mall, a food court, or just every time you enter a barbecue or a party, you can ask them to spy on the mood of people. You can show them a few different people and ask them to read the mood. What do they look like with their body and voice when they're frustrated, angry, getting angry? Ask them to spy on you and your family. When you're getting annoyed, and the answers for this are, by the way, priceless and hysterical, what do you do with your body and voice? The more they build this repertoire, they're teachers this fall. What does the teacher do when they're in a good mood? What do they do when they're wanting this subject to be moved on from, right? Ask them to spy on that and report back, because the more we are aware of people's moods and the way they feel about things, the more we can react to that information and we can have more positive social connection and interaction. So every time you enter a family party, you two can be spying on something. And it's a fun way for you to have that connection with that child. It's also why I want parents involved with social learning, because you're there on the front lines and you have those opportunities. They can pick 5 people and watch their body language and notice, like I mentioned. One of the things we all have to do in every new place we go, especially back to school, is what are the unspoken rules and social norms of that place. And so we want to read the social expectations and look at what are the ways that we know that you take off your shoes or that you, clean up your place. And so one of the things you could be doing is asking them to spy on their class. How do they know what is okay and what is not when things aren't written down? A lot of this is not written down. And the more you do this casually in everyday life, hey, as we're entering, let's try to spy on, Auntie's house and what she wants to do. What is it how do we know if we put our feet on the coffee table? How do we know if we don't? The more they'll build that muscle, and they'll have that to go to school and college. I'm going to skip these videos because I don't want to miss out on giving you guys all the good content. Another exercise you can do at home, which will help them with emotional and self-regulation, is called building a tower. So this wonderful family here, I made a series of videos with kids from all over the world, and they are on my website, CarolineMaguireAuthor.com, for you to watch, where we did the exercises from Why Will No One Play With Me, but without me, just videotaping it. But the families play the game of building a tower, and there are rules, and they have to learn to work cooperatively together. And as you can imagine, it's actually the parents who sometimes struggle the most. The idea here is if we play games with children, they can work out a lot of the things that they struggle with in life. In terms of emotional and self-regulation, you can give them calming techniques that they practice, but they're doing it in a safe environment at home, and they're learning to work these things through. And I talk way more about this in the book, but you want to give them an arena for practice and tell them that we're going to practice this. And I actually have something Attitude's going to send out with a video of me showing how to do this. We want to improve kids' emotional vocabularies. So when children just say angry or frustrated or a couple of emotional words, the more you talk to them and ask them questions or share with them more of an emotional vocabulary, or ask them to name it to tame it, the more their emotional vocabulary will grow, which is essential for emotional regulation. When you read to them at night, you can be talking to them about characters. When children read things like The Little Red Hen, I love it because there's a lot in Llama Llama, Mrs. Mama, or Red Hen. We can talk about the character's dilemma and have them start to think about that and read those dilemmas and talk about the character's inner emotional life. The more that they're aware of things, the more they're going to grow that repertoire. And I'm going to move toward the end because we're out of time. I'll just share with you. This is the book, Why Will No One Play With Me, that I've referred to. We're going to send this out, but I have a free gift for you, the video of me doing Good Winner, Good Loser. I also do a ton on Instagram nowadays where I show how to build these social skills. So you can go to author Caroline M. And I have a lot of videos on my website, et cetera, of me doing these activities so that you can see what it looks like and you can spy on it. And I can't say enough about this is a long journey, but it's such a worthwhile journey. And I know sometimes it's hard and kids resist, but you are their original teacher and you really can learn to work with them and build these skills. And we're ready for the Q&A, I think.
Caroline, this information is so helpful. I love the idea around social spies. Before we start the Q&A, I'd like to thank Play Attention once more for sponsoring this webinar. So we've received great questions from caregivers, and let's get started. What if kids are verbal processors and don't understand what they do or feel? How to help them become more self-aware?
Sure. Self-awareness is definitely a muscle that can be built. A lot of times when kids are verbal processors, they also don't understand that not everybody gets verbal processing. So one of the things I would teach my verbal processor to do is just to say to people, I'm going to process this out loud so that people know. But when we're trying to build self-awareness, this witnessing technique that I've been teaching you today is really key. To be self-aware, you have to be aware of your inner emotional life. So the more you ask them questions about how they're feeling and they're able to verbalize it, and then you say, okay, what I hear you saying is, and then recap it for them, and maybe in a smaller way if they're verbal processors, the more they're going to witness how they are. The more we also talk about our feelings and ask them what they're feeling. And if they can't tell you, which is very common, to start to notice and suggest, well, I wonder if you're feeling this way or that way, and then talk it through so that they have that witnessing of like, oh yeah, right now I do feel that way. And they can witness their body signals and how it feels in that emotional state.
What about children who accept being mistreated and don't stand up for themselves?
I'm so glad you asked that question. So I have a series of tools called the Flavors of Friendship, where we just talk about what is friendship and what are relationships and what is it to be treated well. And we don't say you're not treated well and you should stand up for yourself. We talk about friendship and relationships and what it is to be treated well and what they want to expect from relationships. And what tends to happen is then they start to realize who they know and how they're being treated. So I even have an exercise in that where you put the people in your life kind of into how they treat you and what's good about the friendship. And by doing that exercise of looking at friendships in a very non-judgmental way, right? I don't say, obviously, this relationship is toxic, right? They start to open up more and start to realize it. The other thing is I want to foster those strengths. A lot of times the reason kids don't stand up for themselves is that they don't feel like they have options. So we're giving them social skills and we're helping them feel like they have options. I want them to also feel like they have strengths and to give them a place where every day they show their superpowers really helps them feel better about them, which allows them to realize, I don't want to be treated this way.
Someone writes, how do you get your child to take the risk of trying to be a friend versus the safety of virtual play at home alone?
Yeah, that is such a great question. So one of the things I do is I never ban virtual relationships because then it becomes the forbidden fruit. I have been working a lot with what I call mini connections or micro connections. So when they have virtual relationships, it's easier because you don't have to adapt. You also can be whoever you want to be, and you don't. It's not out of your comfort zone. So I never ask kids to, make friends or do something big like walk across the hall and talk to someone. I'll just say, what if today you smiled at someone? What if today you went and sat in the cafeteria? You don't have to talk to anybody. You can just sit. And I would help them get involved with someone and with something rather that is their interest, where their kind of like-minded people are. That's what online is really appealing because you can be with people who are similar. That's where the coaching technique I taught is really going to be powerful because if they resist that, you can have open conversations and over time help them with that resistance rather than just letting it go or having it be the elephant in the room.
What if instead of the child being shy and anxious, your child thinks they are amazing and awesome and the best at nearly everything? How do you get them to tone that down so he doesn't come off as being boastful or a know-it-all?
Well, first of all, I think it is so wonderful when people think that they're wonderful. I would say a lot of the kids I work with are wonderful, but they don't necessarily know how they come off. So rather than telling them, don't be boastful, don't be braggy, I would use those questions and I would ask them, like, what do you think other people feel when you say this? And have them start to witness people's reactions. So let's spy and let's see people's reaction to that. But I don't want to crush their soul. I want to keep that esteem up because that's a wonderful thing and life is tough enough, right? So I want them to learn to adapt their behavior, reading people's facial expressions and mood the way I'm teaching you is really key so that they can know when they're going a little too far.
What about in the moment as it's happening? We're at the playground, things are not going well. How can I help my child without embarrassing him, but keeping him safe from kids who say, no, they don't want to play tag with him, and maybe they begin to get aggressive?
So if that's a historic happening too, I would talk to them before we get to the playground. So if you have a kid where that's recurring, right, I would talk to them before the playground and have a code word or something that they agree you can do to help them when they get to be a little too much is how I usually put it. I also would know to coach a little bit from the sidelines. It might be that we have to just say, oh, we're done playing today and we need to debrief and talk about it after and rehearse how do we respond to that at home. But if we don't want to shame them in the moment because then their deflector shields go up and they don't want to talk about it at all and they shut you out. So I would try having something in advance. I would try a code word. I would also try in the moment asking them what they think the other person is feeling and, what are they experiencing and could we do something else?
What should you do if your child's only friend is a bad example? Should you discourage the relationship?
I would say I would encourage other relationships, right? We don't want it to be that we ban friends, because what ends up happening is that then they're wildly attracted to that friend. But a lot of times kids, being immature, are not necessarily attracted to the friends that are the best for them, unless there's a real safety issue, in which case you have to end the friendship. I would encourage other people who are better positive social models, and encourage them to look at it. You know, what a great play date today. I loved playing with so-and-so. When we're with him, I notice he's really kind to people. And then reflect, you know, what happens when you are playing with so-and-so, or do you have any friends who aren't very kind? Whatever the issue is, and try to start having those witnessing type discussions. But yes, I would encourage friends who display positive social behaviors and who encourage that.
I have a question from a high school teacher in Sweden. He says, I'm a high school teacher and I often know the diagnoses my students have, but I'm rarely around during break. What can I do if I hear about loneliness or get a gut feeling?
So loneliness during break?
Well, that's all the question says.
Okay.
So I imagine it's during a social hour or time.
So, I mean, I don't know if they're doing this in Sweden, but one of the big things we're doing in America now is encouraging social emotional learning in the classroom. The more we, you know, when we're teaching kids these skills in the classroom, the more they're going to translate into daily life. I also have on my website, CarolineMaguireAuthor.com, tons of free handouts for teachers to give to parents if they're getting those 4-page emails about kids being lonely and left out and they don't necessarily have all the answers. And I would say the more we as teachers can foster relationships in the classroom and help kids be able to join in and be a little bit of a shepherd to them, help them to physically figure out how to navigate things, the less we're going to hear about loneliness outside of our care. Because in a way, we can't really do anything when they're not with us unless the parents are asking for advice.
A caregiver writes, how can you prepare your child to be coached if they don't realize they need help?
I love that question. I'm so glad you asked. So we as parents coach all the time. And when you're a coach, right, a coach doesn't get in the water and swim with the swimmer. The coach helps you from the sidelines. So we don't need to tell them that there's a problem. We don't need to, and I never tell kids there's a problem. What we're doing is asking them questions and showing them things as their guide to the galaxy, just like we show them how to fill the dishwasher, just like we show them any other life skill, sweeping, anything, right? And so I don't want to tell them there's a problem, and I don't want you to tell them there's a problem. I want us to ask them questions about social norms, social expectations, what's going on here. Hey, what do you think? Let's spy on people who are, this is a favorite. Go to any supermarket, any public place, you will see someone who is losing themselves and is not self-regulated. Let's go spy on that. What did you think about that? Kids really have a reaction, even if they have never been regulated before, and they have a reaction to those big reactions and how badly people are behaving and treating people bad. And now we talk about it. We don't have to tell them, hey, you're not self-regulated, you're not doing something. We can just talk about it and foster those skills like we would any other skill.
So we have a few questions from young adults wanting to know, do these techniques work for young adults or do they differ? How can we make friendships as a young adult?
I'm so glad this came up because what I'm working on right now is a lot of stuff for young adults, college students, and adults. Every single lesson in Why Will No One Play With Me absolutely works for adults. I've been using them in adult social skills groups last year and for the past 16 years. And you absolutely can use some of the things like learning how to make chit chat, learning how to bridge in a conversation. All of that stuff very much works. You don't need the open questions because you're coaching yourself. But what you can do is be a spy and observe and ask yourself questions. And then if you go to my website, I have tons for adults and young adults and ADHD folks who are trying to learn these things. But I would say any of this applies, and you can do it on your own. And then if you wanted, you can come back and share with me. I'd love to hear.
Someone writes that her 13-year-old son almost exclusively has online friendships only, similar to a previous question. But she says his texting is rude and inappropriate, but he says this is how kids talk to each other. How do I deal with that?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Kids are always telling me that, on Discord, we yell at each other and you just don't know because, you're not a kid. I would say that he and his parent need to spy on the way other kids talk in these online forums. And what I have found with kids who do read the room is that there are limits to being rude or being blunt or yelling or any of the things that are sort of on the online groups. So if they spy on the social norms and you talk about social norms, the idea that it's just a free-for-all isn't really true. The other thing I would say is that there may be places where they're not learning the most positive things. And as a parent, you can revisit that and see if it's the best place. But I would look at the text and say, oh, play very dumb. Like, I don't know. How would the other person receive that? And just start talking in general about how people receive certain messages, because what's happening is the teenager is sort of sticking to this idea that anything is okay, which is the story he's telling himself.
One mom is looking for a bigger intervention for her fifth grader who has worn out his friends and classmates with his social struggles. He argues about rules, he interrupts, he corrects. Is there something more that she can do?
Absolutely. She can coach him. And if she wants to write me, I have trained hundreds of coaches who do this methodology and can work with him. But I also would say that there are therapists and other folks who run social groups that he could go to. So any of the above, I completely think everyone benefits from that.
Can you give us the language to help bring our child's attention to the behaviors that may be off-putting toward their friends? I can never seem to find the words without making my kid feel shame and or wrong.
I would do a little more of the step into people's shoes. How do they feel? And I would also point out in the world when someone does something similar and just say, wow, that tone was so off-putting. And I'm wondering how the other people feel, and then talk about it and help them witness it. There are also lots of exercises that I have in the book about tone and what we say and sort of being off-putting. But just off the top of my head, I would say the language is to ask, even when you hear that tone to you, to kind of go, oh, I know you didn't mean it, but that doesn't make me feel great. It's not shaming to say that. It's reacting as a human being. So we're just to say, I don't know. That felt, abrasive. And to ask very kindly that we can talk about this. And, is it okay if we have certain tones in our house that we want to promote and others that we don't want to use, and make it a system-wide thing so that there's not that shame. Everybody, dad, mom, other kids, everybody's working on it.
Do you have tips for social rejection sensitivity? Someone asks.
Yes. absolutely. So on my website, I have a whole section. It is under adults, but it all works for children on rejection sensitivity. One of my biggest tips is that when we start the spiral and we feel rejected, we go into fight, flight, or freeze. So one of the things I would be doing is working with the child on how do they respond when they go into fight, flight, or freeze, and have them with a technique like havening or tapping or something that they can do to stop that spiral. And then I also talk about, it doesn't matter how it feels to other people, it's how it feels to you. So I don't tend to do a lot of this, the size of the problem is small. I tend to say, okay, if this felt like a lot to you, then how do you respond so that you bring your limbic system back down and do some CPR for yourself?
Well, unfortunately, those were great answers, but we're out of time now. So I thank you for joining us today and for sharing your expertise with our ADHD community. Make sure you don't miss future Attitude webinars, articles, or research updates by signing up to receive our free email newsletters at attitudemag.com/newsletters. If you're listening in replay or podcast mode, visit attitudemag.com and search podcast number 418 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the certificate of attendance option. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine. The latest fall issue is filled with practical advice and tips from experts, including Caroline, who wrote about social anxiety and forging friendships. Other articles include how to bully-proof your kids, how to get the LD support your student needs, and so much more, including a special Success at School section, everything you need to know to prepare your child for a successful year. Subscribe today for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.